There has been much discussion during this corona business about using PhotoPea as a substitute for Photoshop. So today I'm going to go over how to do some Photoshop things in PhotoPea. And this is for students out there, wherever, teachers out there, wherever, whomever this might help. What I would usually be doing this time of year in my classroom would be a copycat magazine project, where I give them a magazine cover and they have to try to recreate it. I don't usually allow them to do tabloids, but given the crazy business and the world that we're in right now, we're going to go with the tabloid this year. So you can see an example here of the National Enquirer, and I picked it because it has a lot of features to it. Notice that down here in the bottom left-hand corner, we have a picture that is clipped into a shape. That's a clipping mask. You'll notice we have various shapes in here. For instance, here is a pen tool drawn shape that has 3 right degree angles and then a curve. So we'll go over how to do that. How to fade something out at the bottom. So notice this shape gradually fades out. Here we've got some like painted on business happening at the bottom. And some additional things too that I'll go over. So this is sort of what I'm going to go over, the parts of how you could create this type of a thing. Oh, also how to make like this piece of hair go in front of these letters. Now, I kind of am on a bit of a time crunch. So if I was going to do this as an actual project, I would go out and take a picture. And I would deliberately stand on the left-hand side of the picture. And I would suggest that students doing the project do that. So take like a full... like this whole thing is your frame and put yourself over here on the side. And then don't worry about everything else that's going on back here, but notice that you do want it to be kind of, tame, I guess you might say. Also, probably a darker-ish colored background. So, like don't turn the light on in a room or use a flash so that it's on you and everything behind you is darker. But this is kind of the general gist of what we're doing. You can open PSD files in here. If you have them saved, but it is not cloud-based, so it doesn't actually save your document in the cloud. If I were to create something, I can save it, or if I create something and download it, I can open it. So it will open PSD files. So if you were in the middle of a Photoshop project at school and you have it saved to a USB drive or even to your Google Drive, if you're on a Chromebook, you can pull it straight from that Google Drive. Here, I have it on my computer and I just made a folder. But if I click open, notice it will open up this document that I've played with, and you can see all the layers over here. So we've got everything happening. Now, one thing I have learned about this program is that if you have 2 things open and you close this one and want to go back to this one, sometimes it doesn't go back. Like it just acts weird. And then if you open up a second thing, it's okay. So it's not going to be Photoshop. It's going to be a little bit quirky, but it does work. So we're going to create this magazine cover. We're going to assume this is actually probably not an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, but we're just going to go ahead and go with that. So I'm going to go to File and New and choose your regular print size letter paper. Now, because 300 dots per inch, that's the resolution, is going to make a huge file, I'm going to drop this puppy to half. That's 150, just so the document is not that big. And I'm going to call it CC Magazine for Copycat Magazine and hit Create. And now I'm going to have my document. So we've got the document here. Just like in Photoshop, we can go to the Window menu to access panels. So Navigator is one of the first ones I go over with my students, and History as well, because we can back up in the history. So there's your history. Here's your Navigator, and you can zoom in and out just like with regular Photoshop. And you've got a little box in there so you can tell what you're zoomed up on. We have our layers panel where it normally is. You're going to have your background layer, and that's going to be locked as always. You do have a button for blending modes and opacity to make things see-through. And then down here at the bottom, you can still link your layers together. You can add layer styles. This is the FX button that you're used to. You can add adjustment layers, so you can still make things brighter or add levels adjustments. You can still add layer masks and make groups, and even delete things. So all of this is pretty close to the same. Okay, so let's start off by saying I'm going to put my big picture of me in the background. Now, if you are going to put a big picture back there, your best thing is not going to be to open it separately and then drag it in. That doesn't work the way it works in Photoshop. Also, you'll notice I have transform controls. So when you're on your Move tool, you can decide whether to have those automatically on there or just turn them off when you want. And you can also decide whether or not as you click on an object it switches to the layer. I'm turning both of those off for me. Okay, so I'm going to hit File and Open in Place. That means open it and put it in this document. And we have that in Photoshop too, it's just File Place. But in Photoshop it inserts it as a smart object, and here it doesn't. So I'm going to add this, and again my head is not in the right place for this, but we're just going to go with it for now. Here's my picture. It automatically, if it's bigger than the canvas size, makes it fit. But I'm going to hold Shift and pull from the corner just like I would do in Photoshop to keep it, you know, the right dimensions. And there we go. Okay. So once I get that in there, I'm going to hit my check mark just like always. You can also hit enter. That still works. And so you can see here I've got my picture. So there's my picture on there. So additional things that you're going to want to do is to put your head in front of your words. Now, so let me add Inquirer, the name of the magazine. So I'm going to click on my type tool just like I would in Photoshop. You can come up and choose your fonts, and they have a lot of fonts actually, and if you have font files you can load them if you have those TTFs and so forth. But since most of those websites are going to make you download a zip file, I probably would recommend you just use the fonts that it comes with. If you know the name of a font, you can try to search it, and you can also favorite fonts. You can hit a star on here if you want to. All right, so the one that I found in here that kind of looks like this one starts with an I, H-I-J-K, there you go, this one, Enter UI. So I'm going to click that one, and then I'm just going to click out here and probably go ahead and make it pretty big. I don't know what size, that's 114. I'm going to click one time so I can type Inquirer. This font is already kind of italics. However, if it wasn't, you could double click and select your words, go to your window and your character panel. We have a character panel, works just like in Photoshop. There's a little button here on the side. Now it's going to make it more italic because this is already italic. Or if you wanted to bold it, I'll go ahead and bold it because it is pretty bold. All these same little buttons are down here. They just look a little different. Here's your size, here's your leading, here's your tracking. I wouldn't mess with those. And then your baseline shift. And you can still, again, I'm going to hit my check mark. You can still use your transform button. So if I click to my move tool, I can add my controls. Don't forget to hold shift and pull from a corner, but I can still make this bigger and just do it that way instead of changing the size in here. And you can still change the size in here, by the way. So totally up to you on that. If you use those transform controls, you can just turn them off and it sits it down, so you don't even have to hit enter or a check mark necessarily if you're using transform buttons through there. Okay, so let's take a look here. This one, it's going to be in white. So, you know, just click on the box and you can change your color to whatever color you need. If it doesn't take, like that didn't, switch to your type tool before you do it. And there we go. I'll hit OK. We should be good if I hit my check mark, and we are. It does have a bit of a drop shadow on it. So I'm going to go ahead and add that drop shadow. So I'll click over here on my layer and hit the effects button, the layer style button, and go to drop shadow. It does preview like in Photoshop, and you can still modify things like the distance and the spread and all those various things to make it look like you want it to look. I'm going to say that that is fine. Notice you can change the opacity, so if you needed it to be darker or lighter, you can still do that just like in Photoshop. I'm going to hit OK. And then we have it in there. We would add the other words, but I don't want you to sit here and watch me for a whole hour, so I'm just going to kind of hit the highlights and you can figure out the rest on your own. Now, let's say I wanted my head to go in front of these words. Okay, so to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this layer because I need to keep this background layer. Then I need a little chunk of head, right? So I'm going to click this layer and drag it down to the new layer button, or you can right click it and just duplicate it. Okay, so now I have two of them. I'm going to call this one the head part, because you got to know which part it is. And then I'm going to select that part. Now I'm going to grab my navigator again just to zoom up and stuff. Oh, okay, here we go. So now I'm in here. We do have lots of different tools. You have your plain old lasso, your polygonal lasso, and your magnetic lasso. These are not as good as Photoshop, but you know what? It's going to be okay. I'm going to click magnetic. You do have an add and subtract from selection and all of this different stuff going on up here. Replace is new selection, unite is add to selection, and all of that stuff. And instead of select and mask, we have refine edge up here, but it works essentially the same. So let's say I click here to lay down my magnetic lasso, and then I just start dragging. Oops, it's going around the letter. So let me hit escape and start over and turn this off while I'm doing it. Okay, again, be sure you clicked on the head part. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to drag through. Just like in Photoshop, if it starts going the wrong direction, scoot back. If it puts down a point, hit backspace and then click as needed. So I'm going through. I don't need the whole thing. I just need part of it because we're just going in front of that text. So this is probably far enough. I'm just going to wait across here and then come back and seal it up. There we go. All right, so we've got the selection. Again, it's not going to be the absolute greatest. We can't refine it just as nicely as Photoshop, but it will be fine. So I'm going to click on Refine Edge. That brings up what would be like the select and mask. So like over here is what it's going to look like, okay? Over here, you can paint in white or gray or black. So black is hide. Black's like an eraser. And white is like if you cut off part of it and you wanted it back. For instance, if I click in white, and by the way, this part's slow, so I don't like it a lot. But like if I paint over these eyeballs, well, that went pretty quick, then they show up over here. And if I switch it to black, it's like painting on a mask in black or white. I mean, that's essentially what's happening here, okay? Now, you can put it out to a new layer, but we already made a new layer out of it. So what I'm going to do is put it out as a mask. So in my classroom, we say output to layer mask. That's what this is. So raster mask, I'm going to hit OK. All right, and now the head part, see there it is, there's the little mask. And if I put my words between these two, if I sandwich them in and turn this back on, there we go. Now my head goes in front of those words. Okay, so that's basically how that works. And, you know, if my selection with my magnetic lasso wasn't as great as it turned out, then I could have gone in there and painted more. I just don't need to. And once you've done it, you can't really get back in it. You know, like in the other Photoshop, if we don't like the layer mask, we can get back in it and fix it. We can disable or delete it, but you really can't get back in there and edit it. When you double click, all you get are these options. So again, not as great, but it works. You can still paint on this in black and white. So if I zoom up close, hate looking at myself up close. But like, let's say that I don't like this letter coming through the hair here. Then I can click on this layer mask, take a black paintbrush. It does have to be black if I want to paint something out, and then paint on it. Oops, I'm in white, look. Actually gray, I guess. Let me flip-flop these. I need black on top. Okay. Oh, here we go. Everything going crazy. Okay, click on here. I want to paint this in black, if I can ever get it to paint in black. Oh, we're still erasing. Oh, yeah, because I'm hiding it. I need to show it. Sorry, look at me. All right, we need white. We're painting in white. Okay, white brings it back in there. So white shows the hair and black hides the hair. And I don't know why I got that confused. Probably because I'm up here and there's nobody at school and it's weird. Okay, so there we go. And if you're using a hard brush like I am, you're going to have those hard edges. You might want a soft brush. Just so it blends a little bit here on the edges, or so it's kind of fuzzy, you know, right there on the edges. But there you go. That's that. So see, you can still fix those little pieces if you want to. All right. All right, that's enough about that since I probably confused you. Okay, so there we are at this point. Let's go ahead and take a look at some other items. Let's look at this bottom corner. So this is a picture inside of a shape, and it has a stroke around it. That's a layer style. So to do that, let's go back to this one. I need to bring in another picture that I can put in the bottom corner. So File, Open, and Place. And let's say I'm going to use this picture of my daughter volunteering at a place. So here it is. It's coming in pretty big. Let me zoom out here. Hold Shift and pull from the corner. There we go. And I'll just hit Enter to accept that transformation and zoom back up on that area. So now that we're here, I need to put this inside of a circle. That might be a little too small. But I need to put this inside of a circle. So I'm going to now draw a circle, and I usually draw the circle on top of it, even though it's not going to be on top of it. So you click your ellipse tool, make sure you click on the button. If you're drawing a perfect circle, hold shift, that's still the same. And then you kind of draw it over it so you know where it's going to go. Okay. Then you have to flip-flop these because you're actually clipping the picture down into the shape. So let me pull this up top. So that hides the shape, but then we're going to clip it. So we right-click in here and say clipping mask. And so now we've clipped the picture into the shape. This is just like in Photoshop. Now, if we want to add a stroke around this, a big red line around this, we don't add it to the picture because the picture is inside the shape. We add it to the shape. So I go to my layer styles, choose my stroke. I want it to be red, and it already is red, and then you're just going to change the size. If it goes around it, then it'll go outside. If you choose inside, it'll start to make your picture go away. So you got to decide which way you want to go. I'm going to go outside though. So it goes around the picture. Okay, so something like that. I'm going to hit OK. And there it is. Now they do hide the layer styles, so you have to hit this little button to be able to see them. But you can still turn them off and on just like in Photoshop. Okay, great. So we've got that part in there. This one's hanging off the bottom, so if you wanted to make it look like that, you know, just, oops, oh, look what happened. We moved it, but we didn't move both. So this is a situation where we need to link the layers. So I'm going to hold Shift to select both and hit this little link button, which now means if you move one, you move the whole deal. So now I can hang this off of the side down here. I can also resize them both at the same time. So if I hold Shift and pull now, we're resizing them both. All right, there we go. That's good. Yeah, so there we go. All right, excellent. Now let's go ahead and look at drawing the this thing down here that's got some like little lines on it or whatever. So we're going to draw a rectangle, and then we're going to paint over the top part of that rectangle. So going to come in here again. Make sure you get the order of your layers is right. So you need to think about where everything's going to go. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it. I need to put it behind this Max Mission and the shape. But it can be in front of the head. That part doesn't matter. So I'm going to now grab a hold of my rectangle tool. Make sure it's set to a fill of red, since that's what I'm using. And then draw your rectangle. And that's back there, kind of like this one, right? But we need to have some little squiggles going on at the top. Well, that's going to be accomplished by using a paintbrush. But you cannot paintbrush on shapes. They're not editable. So you have to make a layer. So I'm going to make a layer here. You know me, I'm big on my zooming up here, so let's zoom up. And then I'm going to be painting on the top of this to kind of give it that little scribbly look that we see here, right? So I'm going to take my paintbrush. There's not a ton of choices of paintbrushes in here, but these bottom kind of straight ones, I think they're called marker, they work pretty good for this purpose. So I've got my marker one. You can decide what size, and then we're on a layer. I'm going to call this paint stuff. And then I'm just going to start painting in here. Oops, I'm in white, so let me undo that. Flip-flop my colors, so red is on top, and here we go. And you just kind of, you know, paint in here. Doesn't have to be perfect. It's just little squiggles and whatnot. Okay, so just kind of go across with my little squiggly business, however you want that to be. Doesn't have to be perfect. They're squiggles, right? All right, there, perfect. So that works. Now, if you want to combine those two so that they make themselves one shape, then you're going to select both by holding Shift and then right-click that, and we're just going to go ahead and merge those two layers. Now, once you merge them, this is not considered a rectangle anymore on the bottom, so it won't operate like a rectangle anymore, okay? Which is fine, but that's just the way that goes. And the reason I did that is because if you look at hers, there's actually a drop shadow going on at the top of all of this. So in order to add that drop shadow, I need to have something up there. So now you're not going to be able to see it on mine because I have on a dark shirt there. But again, I can put this on here, add my drop shadow. Now it's going to shadow a certain direction. If you don't want all the drop shadows to be connected to each other, I turn off this global angle so that only this shadow does its business. So you can't really see it. Again, maybe over here by my shirt you will. I need to change the angle of the sun. So the sun needs to come from down here. See how the shadow goes up top? So my sun's coming from the bottom. There we go. So you can see it. It's not like super noticeable on the rest of it, but you can see it over there. So I'll just go ahead and hit OK. Again, you could change the size, you know, how blurry you want it to be and all that stuff in here. But anyway, I'm going to hit OK. That's on there. You'll also notice that this circle, this shape also has a drop shadow. So I'm going to add a drop shadow to that shape too. Again, my global angle is turned off. In this case, the sun would be coming from over here and going this way. So we're going to move the sun over there and then attempt to get our size big enough. There we go, to where we can see it. There, good. So there we've got that there. I'm going to hit OK. And that global light thing is the same. Photoshop has a global light option, and you can uncheck using the global light in Photoshop as well. All right, we're looking pretty good here, folks. We've got all of this part going on down here at the bottom. I don't need to show you how to do text. You've already got that figured out. And there's a barcode that I'll provide in the files that you can use for the one in my class anyway. As far as adding some additional things, let's go ahead and look at this little shape, whatever it is. And I don't expect my students to come up with the exact same shape because it's not in here. But there are custom shapes built in here underneath your rectangle. If you go to the bottom, custom shape, just like in regular Photoshop, we have custom shapes. And then you've got custom shapes that are in here. It takes a minute, it'll load them, and then you've got all of the shapes. If you know what you're looking for, you can try to search, like star. You know, there's some of these that you can find. But, you know, there's not necessarily, say, a ribbon, for instance. Now, you can add more shapes if you click here. If you have a custom shapes file, Photoshop has custom shapes. I've put some in my PhotoPea Google folder, so you can go add them in there. I don't know if I've moved them into here, so let's see if I can get to my Google file stream to get to it. One moment here. I don't even know which one it's in. PhotoPea. We'll give it a second because it hasn't synced. Okay, simple banners, simple labels, and banners and scrolls. These three I have in the PhotoPea document on my Google Drive. I'm going to go to simple labels and hit OK. What it'll do, I'm going to hit OK. What it will do is it's going to add it to the bottom of the list. So, oops, I have an R in here. Let's get the R out. Okay, there it is, bottom of my list. This particular one it's kind of like this sort of thing going on up here at the top. Now notice we can't see it. That's just because it's down too low. It's behind my picture. So I'm going to drag it up to the top. And I also want to make sure it doesn't get clipped in. So if there's an arrow next to it, you just have to right click it and make it not be a clipping mask. Sometimes they accidentally get stuck in there. You just uncheck it. But see here, we kind of have that little banner going on at the top. So we would have that banner going on here. You can rotate just by pointing out to the edges, just like in Photoshop. So there's that one. As far as drawing some additional shapes, if you're not going to use custom shapes that are built in, you can also use the pen tool. So the pen tool allows you to draw shapes just like in Photoshop. It's kind of hard to draw with a pen tool without a grid. So you can go to View and you can show the grid, but the grid is annoying. See? Wow. If you go to Edit and Preferences, you can modify that grid gap. I don't like to have crazy stuff there. I just like to have boxes to make it easier for me to line stuff up. So, 100 pixels for this one is good for me. That makes it a little easier for me to draw with. And then, if you know me at all, we zoom up like crazy. Okay, so for instance, in this case, I'm going to try to draw this shape. So there's a corner, a corner, a corner, and a curve. Okay, so this requires some fancy stuff here. I'm going to click on my pen tool, make sure my red is on. If you're using red, this one's actually yellow, so I guess I'll go in here and grab yellow. So I got my yellow here. So I'm going to click once in a corner, right, because that's the first corner. And then once in a corner, because that's the next corner. And then once in a corner, because that's the next corner. And then when I get to this corner, I'm going to click and drag. I'm not going to let go like I did on the others. So click, don't let go, drag. And see how we get like a curve going on here? So that's something that we can do to give us that curve on the corner. And then I can come back up and close it off. Okay. So now we have all this stuff. Now it's still not exactly like that one up there, and I'm not really even that concerned if it is, but below the pen tool, we have the direct selection tool. It's also in Photoshop. It's a white arrow hidden under the path selection tool. I'm going to click on it, and then you can click on these boxes. So if you needed to move one, you can click it. And for this one, it would give you those handles. So now you can go through and actually modify where these are at. Now these handles are connected, kind of like a seesaw. To disconnect those handles, if you hold down the Alt key in Photoshop, you can do that, but I haven't found a way in here to do it. I'm trying all these different buttons to see if anything will do it, but it doesn't seem to be. Shift isn't doing it. Control isn't doing it. Alt isn't doing it. But, you know, you can make it work. Or you could have gone ahead and, like, kind of clicked around the corner to draw this. You know, that would even work. But this is fine. You know, it's okay. So let's say we wanted to use this as our shape. Once you've closed it up, you're good. You can call it whatever you want to call it. And then all is well with the world with regards to those. So there you go. That's kind of how you could do that. As far as these guys being the same size, I would create a rectangle and then duplicate the rectangle so that I have two, and then clipping mask your pictures into those rectangles. So let's go back and zoom out here. I'll just stick this up top. I guess this one's actually, it's yellow and the other one would be red. So I'll click this shape. Now if you're changing the color of a shape, you have to be on a shape tool or a pen tool. So just bear in mind that sort of is a requirement. Otherwise you don't see those buttons up there. Okay, so here we go. We'll put this in here. These are out of order. So we have to do some moving around up in here, and the sizes are off. But again, I don't want to be on here for an hour. So, all right, but there we go. So we've got some of this business going on up in here. Let's take a look. So if I have these two boxes here, what I then would do would be to draw a rectangle, just one, that fit in the space that I wanted, you know, like so or whatever. And then duplicate it. You can hold Alt and drag just like in Photoshop here so that you have two of them. And then you're just going to place your pictures and clipping mask them in. So now let's say I wanted to bring in a picture that I needed to crop, okay, where I couldn't just place it like it is. So let me say I'm going to go in here and open up this cow, for instance, okay? And then I'm going to crop the cow. We all know how to use the crop tool, you know, so like I got my cow here. I'll hit my OK button. So now I've got my cow selected, but I can't drag it over like you can in Photoshop because you can't like put them side by side like you want to, right? So what you have to do is once you've cropped it, you go to select all. So it puts marching ants all the way around. And then you can edit, copy, go to your magazine cover, edit, paste. All right, see now it's in here. And now we can mess with it in, you know, the way that we're used to. So I've got this in here. Let's say he needs to go inside this little shape here. So remember the rules for these is one, of course, make sure you know what shape you're on. So I should be on the right one. So here's my cow. Here's the shape to clip the cow into. So cow shape. Take the top one, right click, and clipping. Now our cow is inside there. And if I pick it up and move it, I'm moving the cow inside the shape. So it will only show it in that area. And I can still Control T and change the cow, you know, if I don't like the part that's showing or whatever. But there you go. That's that. And you would repeat that process here. But you want to make, because they're supposed to be the same size, you want to make those rectangles first to clip those in. Okay, so those are clipping masks, which are a big, big thing in Photoshop. Okay, I'm going to do one last thing because we're really about out of time. I want to stay under 30 minutes if possible. All right, let's add this other shape here, and I want to show you how to fade it out to black. Okay, so this is going to involve using a layer mask. So I'm going to zoom out here and add some sort of shape over on this side. And here we go. I'm going to just pick a custom shape. And again, I wouldn't be too picky with my kids as to which one, but there's a file folder on here, so I'm just going to use it. So let's say this is kind of the shape I'm going for. It's really not. By the way, you can modify shapes using that direct selection tool. Now, where they have curves, this would be annoying because you'd be like, woohoo, and that's just not too fun. I'm going to undo that. But you can start with a shape and like move the things around, right? I can also, of course, use my transform controls, and that's what I'm going to do with this one. I'm going to make that top part kind of like that. All right, let's pretend that this is my shape, and the bottom part of the shape, I'm going to turn the grid off, by the way, it's driving me nuts. The bottom part of the shape, I want it to like be invisible gradually. So we're going to add a gradient to that, okay? So I'm going to add a layer mask. So you click the layer mask button. And then layer masks, you paint on them in black or white. So I'm going to take a paintbrush and I'm going to use a soft paintbrush. And I'll make it pretty big. You can use your bracket keys just like in Photoshop to make your brushes bigger or smaller. Now here's where it gets complicated because you've got to make sure your foreground color is set to the right color. And it's kind of hard to tell in here which one is foreground and which one's background. So I get it messed up all the time. And there's not like a button. Usually foreground is on top. So I would take black. So let's say this is my foreground and it's black. And then you would paint on this in black. There you go. And see, now it's going to gradually fade out the bottom. And if you went too far, it's not a big deal. Flip it so white is on top and you can paint in what you erased. It's kind of like erasing and bringing back, right? You're doing it on the layer mask. Now make sure you're on the layer mask because if you're clicked on the layer thumbnail, you're going to paint in white. Well, actually, it won't let you because you can't paint on top of a shape. But you have to be clicked on the actual layer mask. So that's kind of the trick on that. If something is a PNG file, when you place it, it will stay a PNG file. So if I wanted to put this toilet paper down here, oh, this one is definitely not a PNG, but I'll show you how to use the magic wand. So here we go. Let's say we put this in here and we need to get rid of this background. Let's go over here and find the magic wand tools right here. Your tolerance is how picky your wand is. So I'm going to up this tolerance a little bit and click. All right, so that's too much tolerance because I'm getting rid of some of my toilet paper. So I'm going to select, deselect, or Control D and pull the tolerance down and try it again. That looks good. Now, what we've done is select the background. You could just press delete, but it won't let you do it until you rasterize the object because it brings them in as smart objects, just like Photoshop does. You could rasterize it, like it said, and then you could press delete. Or, by the way, I've got that inside my cal. Or you can go to that refine edge. Okay, now before you do that, because if you do it, you're going to see that it's the background, right? So let me back out. Before you do it, you're going to want to select the inverse. You can also right click. Select inverse is opposite. So right click, select inverse. Now if I go into refine edge, you can see, here it is. There's my pretty toilet paper, and that looks good. I'm going to put it out as a mask and hit OK. And there we go. Now I've got my toilet paper with a mask. It's completely editable if I changed my mind or didn't do a very good job. Again, don't just drag from the corner. See how you mess it up if you do that? You've got to hold down the Shift key. There we go. And then you can put it in there where it goes. Whew, all right, that was a lot of stuff, and I crammed it in there. I think I've gone over most everything that I hoped to go over. Just remember a couple of things, and I'll put a little note that has some things as well to go along with this. One of those I know I didn't talk about was rounded rectangles. There is a rounded rectangle tool in Photoshop, and there is in here as well. If we click here on rectangle, this corner radius is how you can draw a rounded rectangle. You have to set the radius before you draw. So see the corners here? Once I draw it, I can't really modify those corners. See, even if you pull it back, it doesn't make a difference. So you kind of have to play with it a little bit and decide what you need it to be before you draw it. See how it's different? That radius is different based on this corner radius. So if you're drawing a rounded rectangle, just know kind of a little extra step there. Not a big deal if you mess it up. You just press delete and try it again. But the rounded radius part there is essential for creating a rounded rectangle. All right, so when you're completely finished, of course this is not finished, but I will pause this and try to finish this up a little bit so you can kind of see what mine looks like. You can download it as a PNG, which is what my students would probably have to do to turn it in. We would make sure that we've got everything, finished and ready to go and download it. And let me turn that off. That's driving me nuts. But anyway, so you would download it as a PNG. Actually, it's trying to download my shapes as a PNG. I'm not sure why it's doing that, but that's okay. We can export it. So let's not download it as a PNG. That must just be the layer. We're going to export it. And so you can export it as a PNG or JPEG. Those are usually suitable. Some people like it in PDF. On Canvas, which what we use, PDFs are actually a little easier to grade. If you upload them as JPEGs or PNGs, I have to download them to look at them. So PDF is actually easier to grade for this. So that's what I'll have my kids do. But you'll export it as a PDF, and that will flatten it so it won't be editable anymore. Now, if you want to be able to play with it and edit it or like work on it another day, then you're going to need to save it as a PSD. And that's a Photoshop file. And that file will have to be saved to a Google Drive or to a computer and then loaded next time you come in. And these are probably pretty big files. So just know that if you want to be able to work on it later, it's not saved in the cloud. So the next time I come in, so let me go here and just close out of these. So if I come in here, I'm going to have to click Open from Computer, and then I'm going to have to go get my file from wherever I've got it saved at. And then when I open it from there, then I can get to it. But you cannot save it in here like a Google Drive automatically. That's not going to work. So you do have to download it, save it as a PSD, and then load it, open it, the next time you come into work. All right, guys, I know that was a ton of stuff, but hopefully that helps you. If you have questions, feel free to shoot me an email. We're doing Zoom conferences from time to time at school. I can always set up a Zoom meeting and share my screen if you need assistance, so do not hesitate to contact me. Good luck, everyone trying to make do. Have a good one. All right, here is the finished one. So this was done entirely in PhotoPea, no Photoshop anywhere, and I ended up putting a lot of things in layer folders because there is a bunch to this. But there you go, folks. You can do just as good work, well, almost as good, not quite as good, but pretty good work here in Photoshop. And I think it's worth definitely investigating. You know, if you're trying to replace some projects here at the end of the year that you cannot do. You know, I took this as my inspiration and got something kind of like this, and I'm pretty happy with it. So, again, good luck. Let me know if you have any questions or need any assistance.